The sun drips over the construction site as workers strike iron and stone. A German shepherd puppy appears behind the fence, crawling through a hole, sniffing the air like a hunter. He slips into a trench of wet concrete and sinks up to his neck. His paws struggle, eyes close. On the other side, a baby crawls to the edge and digs into the mixture, fingers working as if time were an enemy. A mewing cat sounds the alarm. A woman appears, and then the concrete moves. Love stories with animals? Then subscribe now and never miss one. Thanks for following us. Now, back to our story. Under the scorching Texas sun, the Oak Ridge Heights development was slowly taking shape on the outskirts of Austin. What was once barren land was now transforming into what promised to be an upscale community with modern homes designed for young families looking to escape the hustle of city life. The air vibrated with the sounds of construction, hammers pounding, saws buzzing, and the constant hum of voices as workers communicated across the sprawling site. Ethan Miller wiped sweat from his brow as he surveyed the foundation being poured for what would become the community center. At 34, he was the youngest project manager Henderson Construction had ever appointed, a fact that filled him with both pride and anxiety. This development was his chance to prove himself, to show that the company hadn't made a mistake, entrusting him with their most ambitious project to date. "Looking good, boss," called out Ray, his most experienced foreman as he approached. "We're ahead of schedule on the center. At this rate, we'll be ready for the walls by next week." Ethan nodded, trying to hide his relief. "That's what I like to hear. How about the Monroe house? The clients are pushing for an early completion." Ray's expression shifted slightly. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. There's been an issue with the custom windows they ordered. Might set us back a couple of days." Ethan felt a familiar knot form in his stomach. James Monroe wasn't just any client. He was a prominent real estate investor whose influence could make or break Henderson Construction's reputation in the Austin market. "I'll handle Monroe," Ethan assured Ray, though he wasn't sure how he'd manage it. "Let's just focus on keeping everything else on track." As Ray returned to his crew, Ethan's phone buzzed. The name on the screen made his heart skip a beat. Olivia. His ex-wife's timing had always been impeccable. "Hey, Liv," he answered, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Ethan, I need a favor," Olivia said, her voice carrying that familiar tone, the one that suggested she was about to complicate his life. "Further, I have an interview at that law firm in Austin tomorrow, and my babysitter just canceled. Could you watch Noah for a few hours?" Noah, their 18-month-old son, the one bright spot that remained after their marriage, crumbled under the weight of competing ambitions and resentment. Ethan saw him every other weekend, a schedule that never felt like enough, but was all he could manage with the demands of the Oak Ridge project. "Tomorrow's the concrete pour for the community center, Liv. I can't just take off." "It's 3 hours, Ethan. 3 hours for an interview that could finally get me a job in the same city as you, which means Noah could see his father more than 4 days a month." The implication stung, as it was meant to. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the familiar guilt wash over him. "Fine," he conceded. "Bring him to the site. I'll have my assistant watch him while I handle the critical parts of the pour." Olivia's silence spoke volumes about what she thought of his solution, but eventually she agreed. "I'll drop him off at 9, and Ethan, thank you." After they hung up, Ethan stared at the foundation taking shape before him, trying to ignore the irony. He was building homes for other families while his own had crumbled. He and Olivia had been college sweethearts, married young, both determined to succeed in their careers. But when Noah came along, unexpectedly though not unwanted, the delicate, Balance they'd maintained shattered. Olivia had put her legal career on hold, resentment had festered, and before Noah's first birthday, they were living apart. Across town, in a modest apartment complex, Jessica Taylor was having a crisis of her own. At 29, with a veterinary degree and thousands in student debt, she had just been laid off from the clinic where she'd worked for the past 3 years. Corporate restructuring, her boss had explained, not quite meeting her eyes. The parent company is consolidating locations. Now she sat at her kitchen table, scanning job listings, while her elderly cat, Whiskers, watched with disinterested yellow eyes. The cat had been her companion since vet school, a rescue with a permanently kinked tail and a tendency to vocalize his opinions loudly at inopportune moments. "Nothing, Whiskers," Jessica sighed, closing her laptop, "unless we want to move to El Paso." The cat meowed disdainfully. "Yeah, I didn't think so either." Her phone chimed with a text from her sister, Lauren. "How'd it go today?" Jessica typed back, "As well as getting pushed off a cliff, I'm officially unemployed." Lauren's response was immediate. "Come stay with us in Oak Ridge for a while. Save on rent while you job hunt. Ben won't mind." Jessica smiled weakly. Her sister and brother-in-law had moved to a rental home in the developing Oak Ridge community while they waited for their custom home to be built. They'd been trying to convince Jessica to join them in the suburbs for months. "Maybe," she replied, though the idea of leaving Austin, even temporarily, felt like admitting defeat. She'd moved here 5 years ago with dreams of building her practice, becoming known as the city's most compassionate vet. Now, she was considering retreating to her sister's guest room. Whiskers jumped onto her lap, demanding attention. As Jessica stroked his grey fur, her thoughts drifted to the path not taken. Before vet school, she'd been pre-med, headed for a career in pediatrics. She'd switched tracks after volunteering at an animal shelter, falling in love with the idea of helping creatures who couldn't speak for themselves. Sometimes she wondered if she'd made the right choice. Her phone buzzed again. "Lauren, BTW, there's a new vet clinic opening near the Oak Ridge development. Ben saw the sign yesterday. Worth checking out?" Jessica sat up straighter, suddenly alert. A new clinic might mean new opportunities, a chance to help shape something from the ground up rather than fitting into an established practice. "Send me the details," she typed back, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time that day. As evening fell, Ethan remained at the construction site long after most workers had left. He walked the perimeter, checking the fence for security. When a movement caught his eye, a small fuzzy shape squeezed through a gap where 2 sections of fencing didn't quite meet. "Hey," he called out, moving closer. In the fading light, he could make out the form of a puppy, a German shepherd by the looks of it, no more than a few months old. The pup froze at the sound of his voice, then darted deeper into the construction site. Ethan cursed under his breath. A construction site was no place for a stray dog, especially with tomorrow's concrete pour. He followed the puppy's path, calling out in a gentler tone, "Come here, buddy. It's not safe for you here." The puppy seemed to have vanished among the equipment and materials. After 20 minutes of searching, with darkness fully descended, Ethan reluctantly gave up. He made a mental note to alert the crew to keep an eye out tomorrow. The last thing they needed was an accident involving an animal. Unknown to Ethan, the German shepherd pup had found shelter beneath a stack of lumber. He was no stray, but rather the beloved pet of the Monroe family, whose property bordered the construction site. Scout, as he was called, had been a gift to the Monroes' 10-year-old daughter Emma, who at this very moment was tearfully helping her parents search their neighborhood, calling his name into the gathering darkness. As stars appeared in the Texas sky, 3 separate lives, Ethan's, Jessica's, and Scout's, were on a collision course that none of them could have anticipated. The foundations being laid at Oak Ridge Heights would support more than just new buildings. They would become the groundwork for unexpected connections, second chances, and the kind of rescue that had nothing to do with construction and everything to do with the human heart. Morning arrived with the promise of another scorching day. Ethan arrived at the Oak Ridge site before sunrise, his truck's headlights illuminating the gate as he unlocked it. The concrete trucks were scheduled to arrive at 10, giving him barely enough time to prepare before Olivia dropped off Noah. He hadn't slept well, his dreams haunted by images of the lost puppy wandering into dangerous areas of the site. As soon as there was enough light, he did a quick sweep of the area where he'd last seen the German Shepherd, finding no trace of the animal. "You're here early," commented Maria, his administrative assistant, arriving with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to him, steam rising in the cool morning air. "Nervous about the paw?" "Among other things," Ethan admitted, gratefully accepting the coffee. "Olivia's dropping Noah off at 9. I need you to watch him while I oversee the initial paw." Maria raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment on the impromptu babysitting assignment. In the 3 years they'd worked together, she'd witnessed the dissolution of his marriage and had become something of a confidant. "No problem. My nieces and nephews have prepared me well for the toddler tornado. Thanks, Maria. I owe you." Ethan took a long sip of coffee. "Oh, and keep an eye out for a German Shepherd puppy. I spotted one sneaking onto the site last night. Couldn't catch it." At precisely 9, Olivia's sleek silver sedan pulled up to the site office. Ethan watched through the window as she unbuckled Noah from his car seat, gathering the diaper bag and the toddler's favorite stuffed elephant. His son had grown so much in the past months, now walking with confidence, his dark curls, just like Ethan's, bouncing with each step. Ethan stepped outside to meet them, his heart swelling at the sight of Noah's face lighting up with recognition. "Dada," the toddler squealed, breaking free from Olivia's hand to toddle toward him. Ethan scooped him up, inhaling the sweet, clean scent of his son's hair. "Hey, buddy, you're getting so big." Olivia approached, looking polished in a navy suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun. Despite everything, Ethan couldn't help but notice how beautiful she still was, how composed, despite the chaos of raising a toddler, mostly on her own. "I've packed his lunch, snacks, and extra clothes," she said, handing over the diaper bag. "He's been fighting his nap lately, but if you put on that playlist I saved on your phone, he usually settles down." "We'll be fine," Ethan assured her, adjusting Noah on his hip. "Good luck with the interview. You'll knock 'em dead." Something flickered across Olivia's face. Surprise at his encouragement, perhaps. "Thanks, I'll be back by noon." She leaned in to kiss Noah's cheek. "Be good for Daddy, okay?" As Olivia drove away, Ethan turned to find Maria watching from the doorway, amusement evident in her expression. "So this is the famous Noah," she said, approaching with a warm smile. "He looks just like you, poor kid." Ethan laughed, grateful for her ability to lighten the moment. "Noah, this is Maria. She's going to play with you while Daddy works for a little while." The toddler regarded Maria with solemn eyes before offering a shy smile. Maria held out her hands, and to Ethan's relief, Noah went to her without protest. "The trucks are arriving in 45 minutes, Maria reminded him. "We've got this. Right, Noah?" Noah nodded enthusiastically, though Ethan doubted he understood what he was agreeing to. With a last grateful look at Maria, Ethan headed toward the Community Center Foundation, where Ray and his crew were making final preparations for the concrete pour. Across the development, Jessica pulled her compact car alongside her sister's own house. After a restless night considering her options, she decided to take Lauren up on her offer, at least long enough to check out the new veterinary clinic. Her back seat was loaded with a suitcase, Whiskers in his carrier, and a box of professional books she couldn't bear to leave behind. Lauren burst out of the front door before Jessica could even turn off the engine, her pregnant belly preceding her as she hurried down the walkway. "You came!" Lauren exclaimed, pulling her sister into a hug as soon as Jessica stepped out of the car. "I was afraid you'd change your mind." "It's temporary," Jessica clarified, returning the embrace. "Just until I figure out my next move." "Of course," Lauren agreed, though her tone suggested she hoped otherwise. She peered into the back seat. "You brought the demon cat." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Be nice to Whiskers. He's sensitive." As if on cue, an indignant meow emanated from the carrier. Lauren laughed, resting a hand on her swollen abdomen. "Well, it'll be good practice for the baby to have another living creature around, though I was hoping for something more domesticated." The sisters carried Jessica's belongings inside, setting up Whiskers in the guest room with his litter, a box and food dishes. The cat immediately began exploring his new territory, tail twitching suspiciously at each unfamiliar sound. "So tell me about this clinic," Jessica said as they settled in the kitchen with cups of herbal tea. "Do you know if they're hiring?" Lauren nodded eagerly. "Ben drove by yesterday. It's called Oak Ridge Veterinary Care, and there's a now hiring sign in the window. It's in that small commercial area they're developing near the entrance to the community." Hope fluttered in Jessica's chest. "I should go check it out today then. You just got here. Take a breath, unpack," Lauren protested. Jessica shook her head. "If they're hiring, I want to be first in line. This could be perfect timing." An hour later, dressed in casual but professional attire, Jessica navigated the unfamiliar roads of the Oak Ridge development. The clinic was easy to spot, a modern single-story building with large windows and a freshly painted sign. The parking lot was empty except for 2 vehicles, suggesting the practice wasn't fully operational yet. Taking a deep breath, Jessica entered the clinic, immediately appreciating the clean, bright interior. A young woman looked up from behind the reception desk, offering a friendly smile. "Hi there. I'm afraid we're not officially open yet. We start seeing patients next Monday." "Actually, I noticed your now hiring sign," Jessica explained. "I'm a veterinarian looking for a position. Is the practice owner available?" The receptionist's eyes widened. "Oh, yes, Dr. Anderson is in the back. Let me get him for you." While she waited, Jessica examined the waiting area, comfortable seating, modern but warm decor, and educational posters about pet care. The clinic had a welcoming atmosphere that immediately appealed to her professional sensibilities. "Hello," came a deep voice. Jessica turned to see a man in his early 40s extending his hand. "I'm Robert Anderson. I understand you're interested in our open position." "Jessica Taylor," she replied, shaking his hand firmly. "I recently learned that my previous clinic is closing, and I'm exploring new opportunities." Dr. Anderson's expression brightened. "Perfect timing, then. We're looking for an associate veterinarian to join our team. Do you have time for an impromptu interview?" Jessica couldn't believe her luck. "Absolutely." Back at the construction site, chaos had erupted. The first concrete truck had arrived, and the pour was underway when a commotion near the fence line caught everyone's attention. A German Shepherd puppy, the same one Ethan had spotted the previous evening, had returned and was darting between equipment and workers, clearly disoriented and frightened. "Hold the pour!" Ethan shouted, signaling to the truck operator. "We've got a situation." Ray and several workers tried to corral the puppy, but their approach only scared the animal further. In its panic, the puppy ran directly toward the freshly poured concrete foundation. "No, no, no!" Ethan sprinted forward, but it was too late. The puppy leapt and landed squarely in the wet concrete, immediately beginning to sink. Inside the site office, Maria was entertaining Noah when they heard the commotion. Curious, she lifted the toddler and moved to the window where they had a clear view of the scene unfolding at the community center foundation. "Oh no!" Maria gasped as she saw the puppy struggling in the concrete. Noah, following her gaze, let out a distressed sound, pointing insistently toward the window. "Doggy!" he cried, his little face crumpling with concern. "Doggy stuck!" Maria hesitated, torn between her responsibility to keep Noah safe and the urgent situation outside. But Noah was becoming increasingly agitated, squirming in her arms and reaching toward the door. Okay, she soothed. "We'll go see, but you have to stay with me. Promise?" Noah nodded solemnly, and Maria carried him outside, careful to keep a safe distance from the construction area. From their vantage point, they could see Ethan and several workers frantically trying to reach the puppy, which was now whimpering pitifully, its movements becoming sluggish as the concrete began to harden around its legs. "Save Doggy!" Noah wailed, tears streaming down his cheeks. His distress caught Ethan's attention, who looked up in alarm to see his son witnessing the frightening scene. "Maria, take him back inside!" Ethan called, his voice strained. But Noah was inconsolable, his small body racked with sobs as he reached toward the trapped puppy. His cries grew louder, drawing the attention of everyone at the site, creating a moment of frozen indecision as the rescue efforts stalled. It was at this precise moment that Jessica Taylor, driving away from her successful interview at the veterinary clinic, heard the commotion as she passed the construction site. Rolling down her window, she caught sight of the distressing scene. Workers gathered around what appeared to be a trapped animal, a distraught child crying, and a general atmosphere of urgency and helplessness. Without hesitation, Jessica pulled over, her veterinary instincts kicking in. As she stepped out of her car and approached the fence, she had no way of knowing that this moment, this split-second decision to stop, would irrevocably alter the course of multiple lives, including her own. "I'm a veterinarian! Let me through!" Jessica called out, approaching the construction site fence. A security guard hesitated, then waved her toward a gate several yards away. She sprinted, adrenaline pumping through her veins as she assessed the situation from a distance. A puppy trapped in concrete, a life-threatening emergency that required immediate action. Inside the site, Ethan was torn between managing the rescue effort and addressing his son's distress. Noah's sobs had intensified, his little body trembling. In Maria's arms, as he pointed repeatedly at the trapped animal. "I need to help that dog," Ethan told Ray, his voice tight with tension. "Take over coordinating with the concrete team." As he turned toward the puppy, a woman he didn't recognize rushed past the security checkpoint, moving with purpose toward the scene. Their eyes met briefly as she approached, and something in her determined expression gave him hope. "I'm Jessica Taylor, veterinarian," she announced, slightly breathless. "How long has the puppy been trapped?" "Maybe 5 minutes," Ethan replied, grateful for her professional presence. "We've stopped the paw, but the concrete around him is starting to set." Jessica nodded, her mind racing through options. "We need to get him out immediately. The chemical burns from the concrete alone could be fatal, not to mention the risk of suffocation if he sinks deeper." The puppy whimpered, its movements becoming increasingly lethargic as the concrete began to solidify around its lower body. Only its head and upper back remained fully visible, dark eyes wide with terror. "Doggy!" Noah cried again from Maria's arms, reaching out with his small hands as if he could bridge the distance to the suffering animal. Jessica glanced at the child, her heart aching at his distress. "Is that your son?" she asked Ethan. "Yes," he confirmed, the single word laden with emotion. Making a split-second decision, Jessica approached Maria and the toddler. "Hey there, she said gently to Noah. "My name is Jessica, and I'm going to help that puppy. Would you like to help me?" Noah's sobs quieted slightly as he regarded her with tear-filled eyes. He nodded, hiccuping softly. "Maria, take him to the office," Ethan began, but Jessica interrupted. "Actually, I could use his help," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Children have a way with animals, and right now, that puppy needs all the comfort it can get." Ethan hesitated, torn between protecting his son from potential trauma and trusting this stranger's professional judgment. Something in Jessica's steady gaze convinced him. "Okay," he conceded, "but he stays back with Maria until you say it's safe." Jessica turned to the workers gathered around. "I need buckets of clean water, towels or rags, and something we can use to carefully chip away at the concrete without hurting the puppy. Small trowels, maybe." The men sprang into action, grateful for clear direction. Ethan moved closer to the trapped animal, kneeling at the edge of the foundation. "Hey, buddy," he murmured softly. "We're going to get you out. Just hang in there." The puppy's eyes fixed on him, a spark of recognition flaring. It gave a weak tail wag, sending ripples through the wet concrete surrounding it. "You know this dog?" Jessica asked, kneeling beside Ethan. He shook his head. "Spotted it sneaking onto the site last night. Couldn't catch it then." His voice dropped. "Should have tried harder." "Well, we're here now," Jessica said firmly, accepting tools from a worker, "and we're not going to let anything happen to this little guy." Together, they began the delicate work of freeing the puppy, using small trowels to carefully break away the concrete that had begun to harden around its body. It was slow, painstaking work, with Jessica constantly monitoring the animal's condition. "The concrete is causing chemical burns," she explained quietly to Ethan. "We need to get him out and rinse his skin as quickly as possible, but we can't rush and risk injuring him further." Nearby, Maria had set Noah down on a clean tarp at a safe distance, where he could see the rescue efforts but wasn't in danger. The toddler sat solemnly, occasionally calling encouragement to the doggy in his sweet, high voice. His presence seemed to have a calming effect on the puppy, whose gaze frequently shifted to the child. As word of the emergency spread through the site, more workers gathered, offering assistance and tools. Someone brought a large container of clean water from the office cooler. Another produced a first aid kit. The collective energy shifted from panic to purposeful collaboration, all focused on saving the trapped animal. "We need to work faster," Jessica murmured after several minutes, concern etching her features. "He's becoming less responsive." Ethan nodded grimly, calling out to Ray, "Bring me that garden hose from the equipment shed. We need to soften this concrete before it sets completely." Ray returned quickly with the hose, and Ethan directed a gentle stream of water around the areas they were working on, careful not to spray the puppy directly. The water helped, making the concrete more pliable and their tools more effective. "That's working," Jessica encouraged, carefully breaking away chunks of wet concrete from around the puppy's hindquarters. "Just a little more." Noah, watching intently from his spot on the tarp, suddenly stood up and toddled forward before Maria could catch him. Ethan tensed, but Jessica gave him a quick, reassuring nod. The toddler stopped a few feet away from the edge of the concrete, then sat down again, his gaze fixed on the puppy. "Doggy, be okay," Noah said with the absolute certainty only a child could possess. "Doggy, come play." Something about the child's innocent confidence seemed to reinvigorate everyone's efforts. The puppy, too, responded to Noah's voice, lifting its head slightly and giving another weak tail wag. "That's it," Jessica murmured to the animal. "Just stay with us a little longer." After what felt like hours, but was perhaps 20 minutes, they had cleared enough concrete to attempt extraction. Jessica positioned herself to support the puppy's body, while Ethan prepared to lift it free. On E3, she directed. 1, 2, 3. Ethan carefully raised the puppy, which felt impossibly small and fragile in his large hands. The animal whimpered but didn't struggle, as Jessica immediately began examining it. "We need to rinse him thoroughly right now," she instructed, her voice urgent. "The concrete is still active on his skin." Workers rushed forward with the containers of clean water, and under Jessica's direction, they gently but thoroughly rinsed the caustic material from the puppy's fur and skin. Throughout the process, the puppy remained surprisingly calm, as if understanding these humans were helping rather than hurting. Noah watched with wide eyes, occasionally repeating, "Doggy okay now?" Once the immediate danger of chemical burns was addressed, Jessica conducted a more thorough examination. "No broken bones that I can feel," she reported, relief evident in her voice. "But he'll need proper medical attention at a clinic. There could be internal issues I can't detect here, and those burns need treatment." "I'll take him," Ethan volunteered. Immediately, Jessica looked up, meeting his eyes. "I was just hired at the new veterinary clinic down the road. It's not officially open yet, but Dr. Anderson is there today, and we have the equipment to treat him properly." Before Ethan could respond, a commotion at the site entrance drew everyone's attention. A man was arguing with security, his voice rising in frustration. Beside him stood a young girl, maybe 10 years old, her face streaked with tears. "That's James Monroe," Ethan muttered, recognition dawning. "The client I mentioned earlier." The security guard approached with Monroe and his daughter. "Sir, they're claiming the dog is theirs, a German Shepherd puppy named Scout that went missing last night." The girl broke away from her father, rushing forward when she spotted the puppy in Jessica's arms. "Scout!" she cried, her face transforming with joy and concern. "Oh, Scout, what happened to you?" The puppy, Scout, responded immediately to her voice, struggling weakly in Jessica's hold, trying to reach the child. The connection between them was undeniable. "Emma was devastated when he disappeared," Monroe explained, his earlier anger melting into relief as he approached. "We've been searching the neighborhood since last night." Jessica carefully transferred Scout to Emma's arms, showing her how to hold him to avoid the worst of his injuries. "He's had a rough morning," she explained gently. "He fell into wet concrete and got trapped, but everyone here worked together to save him." Emma looked up, her eyes shining with gratitude as she clutched her pet. "You saved him? All of you?" Ethan stepped forward, placing a hand on Noah's head as his son pressed against his leg, watching the reunion with solemn interest. "It was a team effort," he said, his gaze moving to Jessica. "But we had expert help." Monroe surveyed the scene, taking in the disrupted concrete pour, the gathered workers, and the obvious rescue operation that had just concluded. His expression shifted from relief to concern. "The Community Center Foundation," he said, recognition dawning. "This will set back the schedule." Ethan nodded grimly. "We'll need to remove the compromised concrete and re-pour. Probably lose a day, maybe 2. A tense silence fell over the group as Monroe considered this information. As an investor in the development, delays directly affected his bottom line, a fact he had made abundantly clear in previous meetings. Emma looked up at her father, still cradling Scout. "Dad, they saved Scout's life," she said quietly. "That's more important than any building, isn't it?" Monroe's expression softened as he looked at his daughter, then at the puppy in her arms. Something shifted in his demeanor, a subtle but significant change that Ethan recognized as a rare moment of perspective from the usually demanding businessman. "You're right, sweetheart," Monroe conceded, then turned to Ethan. "I think we can accommodate a slight delay, considering the circumstances. Relief washed over Ethan, but before he could respond, Jessica stepped forward with professional urgency. "Scout needs immediate medical attention," she insisted. "Those concrete burns could become infected, and he may have internal injuries we can't see." Monroe nodded. Suddenly, all business again. "Where should we take him?" "Oak Ridge Veterinary Care," Jessica replied. "I can call ahead and make sure Dr. Anderson is ready for an emergency case." As the group prepared to depart for the clinic, Noah tugged on Ethan's pant leg, pointing insistently at Scout. "Doggy okay?" he asked again, his little face creased. With concern, Ethan knelt beside his son. "The doggy is going to be okay," he assured him. "The nice doctor lady is going to help make him all better." Noah considered this, then turned to Emma with all the solemnity a toddler could muster. "My doggy," he declared, reaching out to gently pat Scout's head. Emma smiled through her tears. "He is your doggy too," she agreed. "You helped save him." This exchange, simple yet profound, didn't go unnoticed by the adults watching. Something significant had transpired in those fraught moments of rescue. Connections formed, barriers broken, priorities clarified. As Jessica prepared to lead the Monroe family to the veterinary clinic, she found herself glancing back at Ethan and his son. There was something about the construction manager, his quiet competence in crisis, his evident love for his child, the way he trusted her judgment without question, that intrigued her. What none of them realized in that moment was that Scout's rescue was just the beginning. The concrete that had nearly claimed the puppy's life would prove to be the foundation for something entirely unexpected, a web of relationships that would transform the Oak Ridge community in ways none of them could have anticipated. The newly established Oak Ridge Veterinary Care hummed with activity despite not being officially open. Dr. Anderson had quickly assembled his emergency team upon receiving Jessica's call, and the clinic sprang to life to receive its first patient. "Chemical burns from Portland cement," Jessica explained as she helped position Scout on the examination table. "We rinsed him at the site, but he was submerged for approximately 15 to 20 minutes before extraction." Dr. Anderson nodded, his experienced hands already gently examining the puppy, while a technician prepared IV fluids. "Good call on the immediate rinsing. These burns could have been much worse." Emma Monroe stood nearby, her hands clasped tightly together, eyes never leaving her beloved pet. Her father placed a supportive hand on her shoulder, his earlier concerns about construction delays seemingly forgotten in the face of his daughter's distress. "Is he going to be okay?" Emma asked, her voice small but steady. Jessica turned to her with a reassuring smile. "Scout's a fighter. The fact that he's still alert and responsive after what he went through is a very good sign." As the clinic staff worked to stabilize, "Scout!" the front door chimed. Jessica glanced up to see Ethan entering with Noah in his arms. The toddler's eyes were heavy with the need for a nap, but he perked up at the sight of the puppy on the table. "Doggy!" he exclaimed, pointing. Ethan approached cautiously, clearly uncertain if their presence was welcome. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, but Noah was so worried about the puppy that he wouldn't settle down for his nap. "I thought maybe if he saw that Scout was being taken care of." "Of course," Dr. Anderson replied, surprising Jessica with his immediate understanding. "Children form strong attachments quickly. He was part of the rescue, wasn't he?" Emma moved to make space beside her. "You can come see him," she told Noah. "He's getting medicine to make him better." Ethan set Noah down, keeping a steadying hand on his shoulder as the toddler stood on tiptoes to peer at Scout. The puppy, despite his discomfort, managed to thump his tail weakly at the sight of the child. "See?" Jessica told Noah, kneeling. "To his level. Scout remembers you. You helped save him." Noah's face broke into a delighted smile. "My doggy," he repeated, then looked up at Emma. Our doggy. Emma laughed softly, wiping away a tear. That's right, our doggy. An unexpected warmth filled Jessica's chest as she watched the interaction. There was something profoundly moving about witnessing the pure, uncomplicated connection between children and animals, a reminder of why she'd chosen this profession in the first place. Dr. Anderson straightened up, having completed his initial assessment. We'll need to keep him overnight for observation and IV fluids, but I'm optimistic. The burns are superficial, and his respiratory system doesn't appear compromised from the concrete dust. Relief visibly washed over Emma and her father. James Monroe cleared his throat, suddenly looking somewhat out of his element in the clinical setting. Whatever Scout needs, cost is no object, he stated firmly. And Dr. Taylor, Jessica looked up, surprised to be addressed directly. Your quick action today was impressive, Monroe continued, a rare note of genuine appreciation in his voice. When the clinic officially opens, you can count on our family's business. Thank you, Mr. Monroe, Jessica replied. But it truly was a team effort. Her gaze shifted briefly to Ethan, who was helping Noah gently stroke Scout's uninjured ear. As the treatment plan for Scout was established and the puppy was moved to a comfortable recovery kennel, the impromptu gathering in the examination room began to disperse. Dr. Anderson pulled Jessica aside, his expression pleased. Not exactly how I planned your first day, he remarked with a wry smile. But I couldn't have asked for a better demonstration of your skills. Emergency response, client communication, pediatric reassurance. You handled it all beautifully. Jessica felt a flush of pride. Thank you for accommodating the emergency. I know we're not officially open yet. In veterinary medicine, we adapt, he replied simply. And speaking of adaptation, I'd like to move up your start date if you're available. After seeing you in action, I'm even more convinced you're exactly what this practice needs. Outside the examination room, Ethan found himself in conversation with James Monroe. A surprisingly cordial exchange, given their typically tense professional relationship. My team is already working on removing the compromised concrete, Ethan explained. We should be able to report tomorrow with minimal delay to the overall schedule. Monroe nodded, his usual sharp-eyed scrutiny softened somewhat. Emma's right, you know. Some things are more important than construction timelines. He glanced toward his daughter, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Scout's kennel, reading aloud from a book she'd found in the waiting room. Noah sat beside her, leaning against her arm to see the pictures. Your boy seems quite taken with my daughter and a dog, Monroe observed. Ethan smiled, feeling an unexpected lightness. He's always loved animals. His mother and I... He hesitated, the familiar ache of his failed marriage surfacing briefly. We've been talking about getting him a pet when he's a little older. A comfortable silence fell between the two men as they watched the children. After a moment, Monroe spoke again, his tone thoughtful. You know, the community center plans included a small dog park in the northeast corner. Perhaps we should consider expanding that feature. It might be a nice selling point for families. Ethan blinked in surprise. Monroe had previously been adamant about minimizing unnecessary amenities in favor of maximizing saleable home lots. This suggestion represented a significant shift in perspective. I think that's an excellent idea, Ethan agreed cautiously. I could have the landscape architects draft some options. Monroe nodded decisively. Do that. And Ethan. He extended his hand. Good work today, not just with the dog, with everything. The development is coming along well under your management. As they shook hands, Ethan felt a weight he hadn't fully acknowledged begin to lift from his shoulders. The approval of Henderson Construction's most demanding client, earned not through compromise or concession, but through demonstrated competence in a crisis, meant more than he'd expected. The clinic door chimed again, and Ethan turned to see Olivia entering, her expression a mixture of confusion and concern. Her interview suit had been replaced by casual clothes, suggesting she'd gone home first. "Ethan? Maria called me? Something about Noah and a puppy emergency?" Her eyes darted around the unfamiliar space until they landed on Noah, still sitting contentedly beside Emma and Scout. "What happened?" Before Ethan could respond, Jessica approached, extending her hand. "You must be Noah's mum. I'm Dr. Taylor. Your son was quite the hero today." As Jessica briefly explained the morning's events, Ethan watched Olivia's expression shift from concern to astonishment to a sort of bemused pride. It struck him that this was perhaps the first time since their separation that they were sharing a positive parenting experience rather than just coordinating logistics. "He insisted on helping," Ethan added when Jessica finished. "Kept saying, 'Save Doggy,' until we figured out a way he could be involved safely." Olivia's eyes softened as she looked at their son. "That sounds like Noah, always wanting to help." She turned back to Jessica. "Thank you for including him. And for saving the puppy, of course." "How was your interview?" Ethan asked, genuinely curious. A smile broke across Olivia's face. "I got the job, junior associate position starting next month. I'll be moving back to Austin." "That's wonderful," Ethan said, and meant it. Despite the complexities of their relationship, he'd never stopped wanting Olivia to succeed in her career. And the prospect of having Noah closer, of being able to be more present in his son's life, filled him with quiet joy. As the afternoon progressed, the clinic took on the atmosphere of an impromptu gathering. Dr. Anderson ordered pizza for everyone, declaring it the unofficial pre-opening party for Oak Ridge Veterinary Care. Emma and Noah continued their vigil beside Scout, whose condition steadily improved under the watchful eyes of the clinic staff. Olivia, after initial hesitation, joined in the conversation, finding unexpected common ground with Jessica over their shared experiences of navigating male-dominated professional environments. For Jessica, the day had taken on a dreamlike quality. 24 hours ago, she'd been unemployed and uncertain, questioning her career choices and contemplating retreat. Now, she had not only secured a position at a promising new practice, but had also experienced one of those rare professional moments that reaffirmed her calling. The fact that she'd also met an intriguing single father with kind eyes and capable hands was an unexpected bonus. As evening approached, the impromptu gathering began to disperse. The Monroe family prepared to leave, with assurances from Dr. Anderson that Scout would receive round-the-clock monitoring and that Emma could call for updates any time. "I'll bring Noah to visit Scout tomorrow, if that's okay," Ethan told Emma, who had finally been convinced to go home and rest. The girl's face brightened. "Yes, please. Scout would like that." Monroe, overhearing this exchange, approached Ethan. "Why don't you bring him by our house instead? Scout should be home by tomorrow afternoon if all goes well, and Emma would love the company. We have a pool," he added, as if this settled the matter. Ethan glanced at Olivia, who gave a small nod of approval. "That sounds great," he agreed, somewhat bemused by this turn of events. James Monroe inviting the project manager's child for a playdate. The universe had definitely taken an unexpected turn. As the clinic emptied, Jessica found herself lingering, reluctant for the remarkable day to end. She was tidying the examination room when Ethan appeared in the doorway, Noah drowsing against his shoulder. "I wanted to thank you again," he said quietly, mindful of his sleepy son. "Not just for Scout, but for including Noah. It meant a lot. To him, to both of us." Jessica smiled, feeling uncharacteristically shy. "He's a special little boy. That compassion of his, it's not something you can teach." No, it isn't, Ethan agreed, pride evident in his voice. He shifted Noah's weight, then seemed to make a decision. Listen, I know this is out of the blue, but would you like to have coffee sometime to talk about community involvement or something? His awkwardness was endearing, and Jessica found herself nodding before she'd fully processed the invitation. I'd like that. Community involvement sounds important. A slow smile spread across Ethan's face. Great, that's great. From the treatment area, Dr. Anderson called Jessica's name, breaking the moment. I should go, she said, gesturing vaguely toward the back of the clinic. Scout needs his evening meds. Ethan nodded, taking a step back. Of course, I'll call you about the coffee and community involvement. Yes, please do. Jessica felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the day's exertions. As Ethan left with Noah, Jessica returned to Scout's kennel, where the puppy was resting comfortably, his IV fluids dripping steadily. You've had quite the adventure, haven't you? She murmured, gently checking his vitals. And you brought quite the cast of characters together in the process. Scout thumped his tail weakly in response, his dark eyes watching her with what she fancied was gratitude. What none of them realized as they dispersed that evening was that Scout's dramatic rescue had catalyzed connections that would continue to develop and intertwine in the coming weeks and months, transforming not just individual lives, but the very fabric of the emerging Oak Ridge community. 6 months later, the Oak Ridge Heights development looked dramatically different. The community center now stood complete, its modern architecture complemented by expansive windows that overlooked a central green space. Nearby, an expanded dog park, twice the size originally planned, bustled with activity as residents and their four-legged companions enjoyed the crisp autumn afternoon. Ethan stood on the community center's wide porch, surveying the scene with quiet satisfaction. What had once been barren land was now a thriving neighborhood, with families moving into completed homes and a strong sense of community already taking root. The Monroe House, one of the first completed, stood prominently on a corner lot, its custom windows, which had once been a source of stress for Ethan, now gleaming in the late afternoon sunlight. Penny for your thoughts? Jessica appeared beside him, her veterinary clinic coat exchanged for a casual sweater. And jeans! She handed him a cup of coffee from the newly opened cafe inside the community center. Just admiring the view, Ethan replied, his smile warming as he took in her presence. Their coffee to discuss community involvement 6 months ago had evolved into a relationship that still surprised and delighted him daily. Hard to believe how much has changed since Scout's great concrete adventure. Jessica laughed, the sound still sending a pleasant ripple through him. That puppy certainly knew how to make an entrance into our lives. As if summoned by his name, Scout came bounding across the green space, now a healthy, growing German shepherd with no sign of his early trauma, save for a small patch of fur on his hindquarters that had grown back slightly darker than the rest. Behind him ran Noah and Emma, an unlikely friendship that had blossomed over shared love for the rescued dog. "Dad! Jessica!" Noah called, his vocabulary and confidence having expanded dramatically in the past months. At nearly 2.5, he was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity. Scout found a stick, a big one. Ethan waved at his son, marveling at how different their relationship felt now that he was a daily presence in Noah's life, rather than a weekend visitor. Olivia's new job in Austin had indeed materialized, and with it came a renegotiation of their co-parenting arrangement. To everyone's surprise, Olivia had purchased a home in Oak Ridge Heights, just 3 streets away from where Ethan now lived. "He's growing so fast," Jessica remarked, watching Noah with obvious affection. Her relationship with Ethan had naturally extended to include his son, and the bond between them had developed organically, built on mutual respect and genuine connection. Too fast, Ethan agreed. Before we know it, he'll be starting school. Jessica squeezed his hand, understanding the bittersweet nature of watching a child grow. Their relationship had deepened over shared values and complementary strengths, her empathetic directness balancing his thoughtful reserve. It wasn't always smooth sailing. They'd had their fair share of disagreements and adjustments, but there was a fundamental rightness to their partnership that neither had experienced before. Across the green, James Monroe emerged from his home, waving as he spotted them. The once demanding investor had undergone perhaps the most surprising transformation of all. Following Scout's rescue, Monroe had taken a deeper interest in the community aspects of the development, championing additional green spaces and family-friendly amenities that had ultimately made Oak Ridge Heights one of the most desirable new communities in the Austin area. "The man of the hour arrives," Jessica murmured as Monroe approached. "Still can't believe he's heading the community association." "People can surprise you," Ethan replied, "especially when their priorities shift." Monroe had confided in Ethan over a rare shared beer that watching his daughter's heartbreak and subsequent joy during Scout's ordeal had forced him to reevaluate what truly mattered. "I've spent years focusing on investment returns," he'd admitted, "nearly missed seeing my daughter grow up in the process." Now, Monroe reached them with an uncharacteristically broad smile. "Everything set for the ceremony?" Ethan nodded, just waiting for the rest of the residents to arrive. Today marked the official dedication of the Oak Ridge Community Center, the very building whose foundation had been the site of Scout's near tragedy. In a twist that still amused Ethan, the residents had voted to name the attached dog park Scout's Place, complete with a small bronze plaque that told the story of the puppy's rescue and the community that had come together as a result. As residents began gathering for the ceremony, Ethan spotted Olivia arriving with her new boyfriend, a professor she'd met through work. Their relationship had evolved into a functional, even friendly, co-parenting arrangement, something Ethan wouldn't have thought possible a year ago. The bitterness that had characterized their divorce had gradually dissolved, replaced by mutual respect and a shared commitment to Noah's well-being. "Should we round up the troops?" Jessica asked, nodding toward Noah, Emma, and Scout, who were now engaged in an elaborate game of fetch involving multiple sticks and much laughter. Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed with a text. Checking it, his expression shifted to one of pleased surprise. "Maria says Henderson just landed the Westlake project. The board specifically requested me as project manager." Jessica's face lit up. "Ethan, that's fantastic. That's the promotion you've been hoping for, right?" He nodded, a mix of pride and disbelief washing over him. "It means more responsibility, a bigger team." He hesitated, looking at her. "And probably some long hours, at least initially." Jessica met his gaze steadily. "We'll make it work. I'm not going anywhere." She leaned in, kissing him softly. "I'm proud of you." The simple statement warmed him more than any professional accolade could. 6 months into their relationship, Ethan was still adjusting to having a partner who genuinely supported his ambitions while also helping him maintain perspective on what truly mattered. The community center's large doors opened, and Dr. Anderson emerged, now a fixture in Oak Ridge, as the veterinary clinic had quickly become one of the development's most popular amenities. Jessica had thrived under his mentorship, gradually taking on more responsibility at the practice. There was already talk of her becoming a partner within a year, a trajectory that filled her with both excitement and occasional moments of, "Is this really happening?" disbelief. "There's my star associate," Dr. Anderson called, waving Jessica over. "The Johnsons just arrived with their new rescue pup." Thought you might want to welcome them personally since you handled their adoption application. Jessica nodded. Be right there. She turned back to Ethan. Duty calls. Save me a seat for the ceremony. Always, he promised, watching as she moved through the gathering crowd, stopping to greet residents and their pets with genuine warmth. The ease with which she'd integrated into the community still amazed him, her natural empathy and straightforward approach making her a trusted figure for both the human and animal residents of Oak Ridge Heights. As the dedication ceremony began, Ethan found himself seated between Noah and Jessica, with Emma, Scout, and the Monroe family directly behind them. James Monroe gave the opening remarks, his usual business-like demeanor softened as he spoke about the vision for Oak Ridge Heights as more than just houses, as a true community where neighbors knew and supported one another. And sometimes, Monroe said, a rare smile crossing his features, the most important connections come from unexpected places. He gestured towards Scout, who sat alertly beside Emma, seemingly aware that he was being discussed. A puppy's misadventure in concrete could have been a tragedy. Instead, it became the foundation, quite literally, for the community we celebrate today. A ripple of appreciative laughter moved through the audience. Many of them knew the story of Scout's rescue, which had taken on almost mythic qualities in the telling and retelling among residents. I'd like to invite Ethan Miller, our project manager, and Dr. Jessica Taylor, who together led Scout's rescue, to unveil the plaque at Scout's place, Monroe continued, gesturing them forward. As Ethan and Jessica stood, Noah scrambled to his feet as well. Me too, he insisted. I helped save Scout. Emma joined in immediately. Me too, he's my dog. The adults exchanged amused glances and Monroe nodded graciously. Of course, the children too, and Scout himself naturally. And so it was that a most unusual group approached the covered plaque at the entrance to the dog park. A construction manager, a veterinarian, 2 children, and a German shepherd who trotted alongside them with apparent pride. As they pulled away the covering to reveal the bronze plaque, applause erupted from the gathered residents. The plaque read, Scout's Place. Dedicated to a puppy whose misadventure brought together a community. May this park be a place where connections are formed, compassion is practiced, and second chances are celebrated. Established 2025. As photographs were taken and congratulations exchanged, Ethan found a quiet moment to pull Jessica aside behind one of the community center's decorative columns. There's something I've been wanting to ask you, he began, suddenly nervous despite having rehearsed this moment in his mind for weeks. These past 6 months have been incredible. You've brought something into my life, into Noah's life, that I didn't even know was missing. Jessica's eyes softened. You've done the same for me, you know. A year ago, I was questioning everything about my career, my choices. Now, she gestured vaguely around them. Now I have all this. A practice I love, a community that feels like home, and you and Noah. Ethan took a deep breath, reaching into his pocket. I was going to wait, plan something more elaborate, but standing here today, seeing everything that's grown from that crazy morning when Scout fell into the concrete, it just feels right. To ask now. He withdrew a small velvet box. Jessica Taylor, will you marry me? Jessica's eyes widened as he opened the box to reveal a ring, elegant and understated, much like the woman herself. For a moment, she seemed speechless, and Ethan felt a flicker of uncertainty. Then her face broke into a radiant smile. Yes, she said simply. Absolutely yes. As they sealed the moment with a kiss, a small voice piped up from nearby. Are you gonna be my mom now? Noah asked, having apparently wandered away from the main group in search of his father. Jessica knelt to his level, her eyes shining with unshed tears. If that would be okay with you, she said gently. I'd like to be part of your family. Noah considered this with all the solemnity a toddler could muster, then nodded decisively. Okay, but you have to help me teach Scout new tricks. Laughter bubbled up from Jessica's throat. Deal, she agreed, holding out her pinky for a solemn pinky swear with Noah. Ethan watched them, his heart so full it felt it might overflow. A year ago, he'd been a divorced workaholic, barely keeping his head above water professionally and personally. Now he stood on the threshold of a new chapter, one filled with love, purpose, and a sense of belonging he'd never thought possible. The community center dedication transitioned into a neighborhood celebration, with food, music, and conversation flowing freely. As evening fell, lights strung through the trees around the green space illuminated the gathering, creating a warm glow that matched the atmosphere. Ethan found himself at the edge of the festivities, watching as Jessica chatted animatedly with Lauren and Ben, the sister and brother-in-law who had unwittingly set everything in motion by encouraging Jessica to check out the new veterinary clinic that fateful day. Lauren's baby, now 4 months old, slept peacefully in Jessica's arms, another connection in the web that had formed from Scout's rescue. Quite a day, huh? Olivia appeared beside him, offering a glass of lemonade. Their ability to share moments like this without tension or resentment still felt like a minor miracle. One for the books, Ethan agreed, accepting the drink. He hesitated, then added, I asked Jessica to marry me. Olivia's eyebrows rose, then she smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. I figured that was coming. She's good for you, Ethan. Good for Noah, too. Thank you, he said simply, knowing she understood all that those 2 words encompassed. Olivia nodded toward Noah, who was now curled up with Scout and Emma on a blanket. Near the musicians, the day's excitement having finally caught up with him. Our son has quite the extended family now, doesn't he? Between your new beginning, my new relationship, the Monroes practically adopting him. She shook her head in wonderment. It's not what either of us pictured when he was born, but maybe it's better, Ethan finished softly. More people to love him, more connections. More foundations, Olivia agreed, raising her glass slightly. As the celebration continued around them, Ethan reflected on the strange, winding path that had led to this moment. A puppy's misadventure in concrete had become the catalyst for healing, growth, and new beginnings that none of them could have anticipated. The foundations that had been poured that day, both literal and metaphorical, had supported the construction of something far more precious than buildings, a community bound by compassion, second chances, and the simple miracle of showing up for one another when it mattered most. Jessica joined them, slipping her hand into Ethan's with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. Together, they watched as Scout, now tired from the day's excitement, rested his head on Noah's lap, the child and dog drifting off to sleep in the security of a world where they were surrounded by love. The concrete that had once threatened to become Scout's tomb had instead become the foundation for a future none of them could have imagined, solid, secure, and strong enough to support whatever might come next. And as the stars emerged in the Texas sky above Oak Ridge Heights, Ethan Miller knew, with absolute certainty, that some foundations, once properly laid, would stand the test of time. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Ethan, Jessica, Noah, and Scout has touched your hearts. Their journey reminds us that sometimes our greatest challenges can become the foundation for unexpected blessings. If you enjoyed this tale of connection and second chances, we've prepared a special playlist with equally moving stories for you to explore. Just click the link to your left. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day, we bring you unique stories that explore life's complexity and beauty. We look forward to reading your thoughts in the comments section below.